I watched your keynote presentation, and now I'm going to ask you to do the impossible and consolidate your hour-long research analytical presentation into a 2-minute synopsis.
Okay, so we are at the point where unified communications as a service is starting to become mainstream. UC in and of itself is mainstream. 1 out of every 2 businesses has UC. We are at that tipping point now where we're starting to see businesses moving directly from just voice services to UCaaS because they want to go to the cloud. There's so many benefits in going to the cloud, and they're starting to really realize that, and we're gaining momentum on that.
We were talking before we started recording this video, and one thing I want to check with you, do you think from the research, and you've been in the industry, I won't say how long, quite a long time, and you've been speaking to these customers and conducting research pieces with IDC and with other businesses, do they really understand what UC is? Because effectively, the customer doesn't really care about whether we call it UC or UC&C, and this sort of transition from voice, they're just effectively adding additional business processes onto systems.
Right. No, the end customer doesn't really understand, doesn't know, doesn't care. You're absolutely right. What they're focused on is, I have this business problem, I need to solve that business problem, help me to do that in the most efficient, effective, and cost-affordable solution and way.
The main sort of focus of your presentation was looking at the 2020 UCaaS market, looking into the future, and I wanted to pick your brain from an industry expert on what pieces of information that you found particularly interesting from the research that IDC have conducted.
So the one thing I would say is that my presentation was tailored to the small business market, so it's businesses with 5 to 49 employees, and so they behave very differently than other segments of the market. And so what I found most interesting in the research that I've done with that segment is things like device usage. So we surveyed them, desktop phones are the #1 endpoint that they're using, but I was surprised to hear that 57% of small businesses said that they plan on increasing their usage of desktop phones in the coming year. And that just blew me away because, with mobility and smartphones and with all these other, solutions like Skype for Business and Office 365 and using, a soft phone, I just kind of assumed that the desktop phone would start to decline. But in fact, it's growing.
I mean, how many times have we seen the article in various places, the death of the desk phone?
Exactly. And so I referenced that in my presentation when I was at Enterprise Connect 5 years ago. That was the key theme of Enterprise Connect. The desktop phone is dead. Well, guess what? It's not dead. And there are users that definitely love their desktop phone and they want a desktop phone. There are other users that are going to be mobile first and don't have any need for it. And then there are going to be other users that want all of the above. And I think that that's the key that the channel needs to figure out by talking to that business what their user base wants, and then you have to cater to them.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that. Why do you think, did the research go into that at all about why do you think that might be in a small business? Is that just a familiarity thing? They've been used to having a desk phone on the desk for all this time. Where's my phone? What am I doing soft phone headset wise? I
think that's part of it, just that they're used to it, and it goes back to one of the other points I made about TDM to voice over IP migration. It just isn't happening as fast as anyone anticipated, and a large reason for that is because if it's not broke, don't fix it. It's the same thing with the desktop phone. We're comfortable with it. Does it need to really be replaced? It works. I've made this investment, so why do I need to change? And I think there's a lot of inertia, both on the services side and then with the devices. And I think that's going to continue until somebody comes along and convinces that small business, these are the reasons, these are the use cases, this is why you should make this move to the cloud. It's going to be more flexible, more scalable, it's going to be more cost effective for you. You're going to be able to enable your employees to be more collaborative, they're going to be more productive, but somebody needs to translate for the small business those learnings into how it's going to directly impact them and where they're going to see the benefit.
Yeah, and I suppose that sort of follows the theme that we were talking about before. Effectively, you need providers like customers from for partners from the SkySwitch network to come in and tell these small businesses these are the sort of business benefits you can leverage without having to understand the nuances of the technology.
Right, absolutely. The first thing I think partners need to do is to start conversations with small businesses around use cases and benefits, and then you talk about technology after, and the technology that enables that use case. But you need to first figure out with that small business as a trusted advisor what that use case is, what they're trying to accomplish, and then work with them to figure out what the best path is and what features, functionality, capabilities they really need to enable what they want to get out of the system.
Were there any other major differences that you saw between enterprise, larger businesses, and the SMEs in your research?
Yeah, so I think that one of the things we've seen is for larger businesses, they are further along that migration path to voice over IP. I think a large number of them have been kind of forced to do that. I think, though, that one of the other differences is in some of the features and functionality that they use. We still see, a lot of large businesses really focused on mobility. They're focused on enabling a mobile workforce, enabling a remote workforce. And so they have some issues that a distributed workforce, they have some issues that small businesses don't have to necessarily deal with. I do think that we had seen more adoption of collaborative applications, video conferencing, and some of the things like Slack, really coming from the enterprise segment, but we're starting to see that move down market. And that's really exciting because I think small businesses are finally starting to understand the whole world out there that can really enable them to be much more productive and enable them to generate more revenue and be more successful businesses. And so it's exciting point for the small business, I think.
Yeah, I suppose it's that convergence, isn't it, of different technology areas that previously, even in a small business, might have been separated in terms of telephony and ICT, whereas now they're coming together a bit more.
And not only that, for small businesses, a lot of these applications and solutions were just out of the reach of them. They weren't able to afford them. They weren't able to, to get access to them. And now we're seeing the democratization of the technology and coming down market. And the price points are coming down. And we're seeing, much more of a focus on integration as well. And I think that benefits the small business tremendously.
Well, that's a really good point, isn't it? Because previously, before cloud technologies, if you take something like video conferencing, a video conferencing solution would have been hugely expensive and out of reach for small business, whereas now, with technologies like Zoom and generally other technologies available in the industry, high five, it's becoming more possible for a small business.
More possible. And it's not just video technology, it's video conferencing, it's web conferencing, it's file sharing, it's contact center. Many of these providers are starting to integrate completely into their stack contact center unified communications. And so you have this complete suite, and they're bringing it to the full range of businesses. And it's really exciting point in time.